Did you know that Lil Baby spent $20,000 a month on lean? Or that Doja Cat needed tonsil surgery from vaping? No? Well, here are some of the most famous rappers and their secret addictions. Now, I've got to talk about Lil Baby's lean addiction. I mean, the guy was spending as much as $20,000 a month on it before he finally overcame his addiction back in 2018. Now, lean isn't cheap, but dang, you've got to be doing a lot of it to spend that much money every single month. According to the rapper himself, things got so bad that he was pretty much forced to commit crimes just to be able to afford it. Now, Lil Baby's lean habit didn't just start all at once. Nope, instead, he first began drinking it back when he was just about 12 or 13 years old. Coincidentally, this is also around the time he first started getting into some serious legal trouble. The rapper acknowledged that those two things actually go hand in hand. And the reason he would do some really bad things to satisfy his addiction to lean is that he was completely dependent on it. To be honest, it sounds like a horrible place to be, especially for a young child who does not have much money to begin with. And get this, when he did finally kick the habit, Lil Baby was kind of afraid to tell people that he was finally sober. Turns out he was worried people were going to be like, his music changed now that he doesn't drink lean anymore. He kind of made his whole persona around it, so the rapper was afraid his fans wouldn't accept him now that he's clean. But hey, kudos to him for still overcoming his addiction. And he's not the only rapper with a history of battling addiction, because 21 Savage had to go through something similar. The rapper became addicted to Percocets, and the story of how it all started is pretty unfortunate. It began with a life-altering event when 21 Savage was shot not once, but multiple times. This brutal experience led to a total of 6 surgeries and definitely took a huge physical and emotional toll on the guy. And if that wasn't bad enough, to deal with the aftermath and recovery, the rapper's doctor prescribed him some Percocet, to alleviate some of the terrible pain he was feeling at the time. Sadly for him, 21 Savage didn't realize at the time that this was to become a bit of a double-edged sword for him. Sure, he was getting some relief at the moment, but it'd lead to a much greater struggle with addiction for him later down the line. While he's gotten over it now, getting to this point must have been nothing short of a battle for the famous rapper. This is especially true when you consider all the serious stuff he's had to deal with over his life. Like the fact that he lost really close friends and family members, and even came close to taking his own life, all before the age of 23. Plus, there's another famous rapper who's gone through a similar situation. Yup, I'm talking about Meek Mill. Now, for those of y'all who might not know, Meek's dealt with a serious opioid addiction in the past. He's doing much better for himself now, but back when he was addicted to it, let's just say the guy was seriously in a rough spot. While talking to Rolling Stone, the rapper talked about how his battle with his opioid addiction nearly cost him everything. Despite being on probation, he had a serious addiction to them. He realized that he had a serious drug problem, but of course he was scared to tell his probation officer because he was worried that he could potentially be sent to prison for years. It's one of those situations where if he came clean and wanted to get better, instead of being given the resources to make that happen, he'd instead be punished and sent to jail. It doesn't sound too great, does it? According to Meek, probationers with drug addictions should not face punishment from the legal system just for having an addiction. It just kind of makes it so. Their drug problem is only going to get worse and prevents people from getting the treatment that they really need. Luckily for him, things worked out better for him than he'd thought. When he finally talked to his probation officer about his opioid addiction, the guy actually helped him recover and sent him to rehab instead of just throwing him in jail. Mill mentioned that this one act completely changed his life, and honestly, I can see why. Of course, drugs aren't the only thing you can get addicted to. Just ask Cardi B, who had a tough time kicking her habit of eating junk food. Now, this is something I'm sure most people have had to deal with. But for Cardi, the problem got a bit more serious than you'd think. You see, back when she was giving birth to her first daughter, she realized that she really needed to keep things together and focus on her health during the last days of her pregnancy. Unfortunately for her, this was also around the time her craving for junk food was starting to reach a sky high, which honestly isn't too surprising. After all, stress can play a huge role in boosting those cravings. And well, being in her position as a world-famous rapper with a baby on the way, It surely must have taken its toll on her. That said, Cardi was able to remain focused and even devised a system to deal with it. So what did she do? Well, she came up with a daily junk food limit instead of quitting cold turkey. Through this, she was able to satiate her cravings without going overboard and causing some unnecessary harm to her or her baby's health. And honestly, it might seem like a simple technique, but it clearly did wonders for her. Sometimes slowly cutting back can actually be the better option, especially when you're dealing with something like junk food. And as it turns out, there's another rapper who could use that helpful advice. I'm talking about 6ix9ine, who once mentioned that he got addicted to coffee. It may be difficult to picture the rapper quietly sipping a cup of coffee in the parking lot of a Dunkin' Donuts, rather than being in the spotlight. But it turns out for a while that was kind of something he did a lot. In fact, things got so bad that he pretty much became addicted to coffee. Who would have thought? Now, rewind to October 2019, a time when 6ix9ine made headlines for a different reason. He was rushed to the hospital for overdosing on weight loss pills and caffeine. So yeah, this quickly turned from a quirky habit to a really serious and potentially life-threatening situation. It turns out that this was the wake-up call the rapper needed. He realized it was high time to address his coffee addiction and take some steps toward betterment. In a candid chat with the Shade Room, Tekashi spilled the beans on the overdose saga. Instead of sticking to the recommended daily dose of hydroxycut pills, he went for 2 pills and topped it off with a cup of coffee. He'd been taking diet pills to deal with his excessive weight gain while he was in prison. And while trying to cut down all that extra fat, it looks like he just went a bit overboard. Hopefully, he's been able to kick the habit to the curb now. Or at the very least, keep those diet pills at bay and stick to just a cup of coffee every day. Finally, there's one other rapper with a secret addiction that fans will want to know about. It's Doja Cat, who had a pretty serious vaping addiction. Now, some folks might consider vaping to be a safer alternative to cigarettes, but the fact is that even vaping can be seriously addictive. Back in 2022, Doja Cat opened up about how she was finally taking a step away from the harmful activity after she got a health scare that served as a reality check for the rapper. She mentioned that she had a potentially dangerous growth in her tonsils and she underwent surgery to have it removed. Then, in August of the same year, she even went on an Instagram Live to celebrate 70 days of being vape-free with her followers. But of course, the process wasn't at all easy for her. Doja Cat asked her followers if they were proud of her for her achievement and added that while she's happy to have taken the step, it wasn't at all easy for her. Even then, she constantly got the craving to smoke, even going as far as to say that it made her want to peel her own skin off. But she was able to hold back those urges, and honestly, good for her. So from Doja Cat needing tonsil surgery because of her endless vaping, to Lil Baby spending $20,000 a month on lean, those were some of the most famous rappers and their secret addictions.